Why men need men. We started chapter 8 with two illustrations. One of Simon working hard on his own business, coming to realise he didn't have a single male friend to share his struggles with. And then we looked at Gary, who thought he had more friends than he really had when challenged by his wife. As men, we often think relationships with other men are not that important. We are content to retreat into our homes, hide behind our roles and just get on with our daily work, and largely go it alone. Women, on the other hand, are by nature more relational, but as men, we tend to be more independent and competitive, and the older we grow, the more isolated we can become. One day we may wake up to realise, like Simon and Gary, how solitary we really are and how few close male friends we really have. Some years ago I came to this realisation. In earlier years I had close working friendships with good men that I related to at a meaningful level. But my circumstances had changed and I was now pretty isolated, working alone in my office and running my own business and ministry. I had fleeting contacts with some men at church, but no real close connections with any of them. And even when our church's men's ministry encouraged men to join in with men's events or men's retreats, I was reluctant to go. I was quite happy to go it alone, but was coming to realise that I was fairly disconnected from other men, and this was not really good for me. Then it was my married son Dallas who asked me one day if I would go with him to our next church men's camp. And I was rather reluctant, but I decided to go for his sake rather than for my own. And that one weekend with other men brought me into a new connection with men that I really needed. And this was the beginning of a journey with a group of men over the next 6 years that has resulted, for example, in the writing of this Reconnected Man series, and now writing this chapter. What a positive influence it has been in my life. I feel so much stronger and better to now have this connection with a number of good men that I can now call close friends and interact with at a deeper level on a regular basis. How many close male friends do you have who have a positive input into your life? Are you really connected with good, godly men, or do you just think you are? If you are in a men's group doing this series, well, that's probably a good sign that you're discovering how valuable sharing with other men can be. So why do men need men? We looked at 6 good reasons in the chapter. And the first is this: to keep us connected to masculine life. Even if you have a wife and children, you still need male friends. Other men can bring reassurance that the drives and passions and struggles and feelings you have are the same as other men. They can bring you also the assurance that you're not alone as you journey through the various stages of manhood. You know, our wives cannot give us that kind of validation. It can only come from other men. That's why we need to be connected with other good men. The second thing is to have friendship and support, male friendship and support. As Christian men, we won't stand strong if we try to battle alone, because we've got an enemy that wants to take us out and leave us passive and ineffective. Think of the Bible story of David, who was pursued by his enemies, and the strength and support that came to him through the little band of men that gathered around him and supported him. Think of the picture the Bible also gives of the Roman soldier that we see in Ephesians chapter 6. We may think of this picture in an individual way as an individual soldier fighting, but a Roman soldier never fought alone. He always fought side by side with other soldiers who supported each other, and they locked their shields together to form an impenetrable wall of steel against the enemy's arrows. Ecclesiastes 4:12 says this: A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. The third reason why men need men is to keep us accountable. To have no accountability can be dangerous. Without it, we can become complacent and careless instead of stepping up to fulfill our calling and responsibilities. That's why we need good male friends and mentors who will challenge us to step up to the mark, to keep our priorities right, and to encourage us to be the best we can be for God in every area of life. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend." The constant demands and routines of daily life can wear us down and blunt our cutting edge. So by regularly interacting with other godly men, they can keep us sharp, they can challenge us, they can correct us, they can keep us honest, they can keep us clean, and they can keep us committed. And in return, we can help keep them sharp. Do you have men like that in your life? We're going to pause now for a few minutes as we go again and join in a men's breakfast with 300 other men to listen again to an interview with the former Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, John Anderson, as he talks about the importance of having other good men in our lives.
And I think you have had men in your life that have spoken to you and you've been able to go to for counsel, and and they've called you up. They've called you into things. Do you want to share a little bit about the role some of those men have played, John?
Yeah, look, there's never any question in my mind that my father loved me, and I felt very secure in that. But in many ways, he was not a particularly forthcoming or engaging father. Many of you will relate to a whole range of experiences on various scales about how it happened. But I don't know that I learned a lot from him about relationships and so forth. My mother wasn't around, so I couldn't watch. He didn't talk about it. So I was very fortunate. Firstly, there was, and I didn't come from a Christian home, so I was led to Christ by a teacher when I was about 15. To my father's horror, "You'll never have any friends again, John." I've got 300 here this morning. Well, at least I did have when I started talking. I've probably lost them now. And what have you. And then, in my 20s, there was a wonderful bloke, and he had 3 sons. And he's incredibly good at fathering them, I have to say that. He's still alive. And I've had the opportunity to say thank you. But he actually literally drew me aside one day, and he said, "Listen, I just want to mentor you a little bit on the issue of how you might approach a relationship with a girl. Because I think it's about time you thought about marriage, and I don't think you've even thought about how to go about it. You frighten them away before you get anywhere close." And that was incredibly valuable. It was as open as that. He said, "I want to talk to you about how you do it." It was a bit old-fashioned. He said, "You go for a walk in the park and you sit down on the bench and you, whatever." I don't know what the modern version of that is. I'm not sure I want to know. Which tells you maybe I haven't done enough talking to my own boy about it. And look, the other thing that I've always had and that I want to encourage you to think about, I was talking to a senior in years and in rank pastor in Sydney, a man I respect hugely, a man whose IQ is off the scale. And he said after a lifetime of pastoring, he was talking about 4 or 5 of us as men one night around a dinner table. He said, "The 2 things that women have most frequently said to me about their husbands are, 'I wish my husband had more men friends.' And the second thing they say is, 'I wish my husband had taken more spiritual leadership in the home.' More moral and spiritual leadership." Interesting indictment of us from the opposite sex. And this is a man who doesn't say those things lightly, and I know would have tallied it up a bit. He wouldn't have just said it. It'd be based on his lifetime experiences. It's an interesting insight. I've always had, though, the other thing I just wanted to finish on, because I want to encourage you in this. I don't know that I've actually been clever enough to go looking for it, but I've always had a few men around me that I've been able to really open up with, to trust, to confide in, and to pray with. And that included politics, where I had a great big rough Australian bloke who used to come round to the house every Tuesday morning in Canberra, and he'd walk in the door, had a big booming voice, he'd walk in at 6 o'clock, so he'd get me before the media started ringing up to crucify me for the day. And he'd say, "Hiya, John, are you loving your wife?" And so I'd say, "Of course." He'd say, "No, John, are you really loving your wife?" And if he didn't say that, he'd come in and he'd say, "Now, you're remembering that you're actually playing to an audience of one out there with all those voters. If you play to him first, they'll get a better deal anyway. But play to him first." And that's accountability. And it's a great thing. It's not a demeaning thing to make yourself accountable to other men. It's an uplifting and important thing. Really important.
Yes, men. The third reason we need to have meaningful connections with other good men is to give wise counsel, keep us accountable, and keep us sharp. The fourth reason why we need good men in our lives is to help us connect with our hearts. Millions of women complain about their husband's lack of feeling and his woodenness. Why do we as men find it so hard to connect with our hearts and our feelings? And even harder to express that to our wives and tell them what's going on inside. Perhaps it's because we don't usually do this with other men, and we have grown up in a culture where boys are taught to hide their feelings and put on a brave exterior. So we close down on our feelings, and especially in the company of other men especially, we don't let them see who we really are. But to be fully alive men, we need to connect with our hearts as well as with our heads. This is where we need a trusting group of men who can challenge us to put down our masks, quit pretending, and be honest about what's going on inside. And as we begin doing this, we may well find that we will now become more able to connect meaningfully and more deeply with our wives at home and at a heart level. And our wives will love us all the more because of it. The fifth reason men need men is to help us deal with grief, because in our journey through life, we are sure to go through some pretty hard and difficult times when we experience loss or sorrow, heartache or pain. When things go badly, when we face failure, when we lose something precious to us, when relationships break down, when our hopes and dreams turn to ashes, how do we handle the grief? Usually as men, not very well. This is where connection with a supportive group of men can be so valuable to help share our grief and prevent us from either trying to carry it all on our own or from leaning too heavily emotionally on our wives. I have been through dark times like this, and it was a men's group that helped me through. They helped me connect with my heart in a new way and helped me to unburden that deep grief that was within. The final reason we need to be connected with a good group of men is to help us raise our boys into men. If you are a father with boys, you will know it can be pretty difficult on your own guiding especially teenage sons into manhood. This is where a few trusted men can help us and our sons by being models and mentors to them of godliness and true manhood. And even if you have no sons of your own, you can become a mentor to someone else's sons. And if you are an uncle or a grandfather, don't just wander off and do your own thing. There is so much you can pass on to the younger generation. Are you willing to step into that role? David said in Psalm 71:18 these words, "Even when I am old and grey, do not forsake me, O God, till I declare your power to the next generation, your might to all who are to come." Yes, men, we need each other through the journey of life. No man is an island. What a difference it could make to our families, our community, and our nation if Christian men came out of isolation and joined hands and hearts together to become warriors for the kingdom of God. God is calling us to rise up, to connect with Him, and to connect with each other. Other men need you, and you need them. We now come to workshop time. So work through the questions together as you have done previously, and don't forget to come to the Connect section at the end, which has a practical suggestion for you about how to write words of affirmation to the members of your group. You might like to do that as a little exercise next week. For next week, we come to the final in this book, Reconnecting with the Kingdom. And so I hope you're able to work through a very important chapter this week, prepare it in advance, and come next week for our final session together. I look forward to meeting you then. God bless you all.